So, good afternoon, late morning, early afternoon, and welcome back to the Davis family garden. I'm currently in the greenhouse, and I've been doing some reflecting lately, and I'm moving to go to school pretty far away, and I am leaving this garden in the hands of my family. This is my family home. As much as I love this space, I do need to fly away and move on and do, things with my life. So this kind of has been a quarantine garden in a lot of ways, and, not that quarantine or the pandemic is over, but I do, have plans to move on. So I keep telling my parents that I'm going to leave them some kind of guide as to what to do and how to take over everything. So this is sort of the first in the series of how-tos, how to grow a garden, how to get it done, what I've been doing. So I figured for this first one I would talk about how to plan for your garden and sort of how to get started. So there's a couple of, a lot of different things that I'm going to reference my little paper here for, so excuse me as I look away from the camera. But I just don't want to forget anything, and I want it to be pretty organized and clear. So the first thing you want to look up is your climate and your growing zone. This is a pretty simple thing to do if you just go into Google and look up your zip code and grow zone. I'm located in northwestern New Jersey in the US, so my grow zone is 6A. That'll help dictate. That's a good guide, I would say, to going online and saying, what should I grow in terms of tomatoes in 6A or in terms of peppers in 6A? A lot of guides go based on your growing zone in terms of giving you advice for your garden. So this is a good first start to just figure out where are you and what's your agricultural zone or what's your growing zone. The next thing you want to figure out is what is your actual space. So where are you on the map, and then what your space is. So in my garden I'm growing in containers, directly in the ground, in beds, in mounds. I've kind of got a mix. This will kind of help you figure out how much space do you have, what kind of things can you grow in the sort of conditions that you have. This kind of gets into what your soil conditions are too. I don't grow a ton of things directly in my soil. Here in northern New Jersey, or northwest New Jersey, we are kind of at the base of the Appalachian mountain range, so we have really rocky soil, kind of poor drainage. It's generally not great conditions for most things that I want to grow. So most of my plants are in beds, in a mound of nice soil placed on top of our stinky soil. Some things are in containers. Okay, I don't know if closing the window or the door made it any better, but I closed the door in the greenhouse. I can't avoid the mower. So I'm talking about growing space. There's a couple different places that you can kind of grow in, different containers. There are beds where you kind of build a frame out of wood or, metal or something like that, stone, and you've got sort of a secure mound of soil that's secured in a sort of a frame. You can do containers where you have literally something just growing in a bucket. Mounds where you just put better soil on top of bad soil and you mound it up. You can do directly in your soil depending on your soil conditions. You can amend your soil to make it better. When you're planting, you also have to figure out what season are you currently sitting in. Right now it is early August in New Jersey. It's really hot, it's really humid, sometimes it rains a lot. We've had a really rainy season this year. I'm right now not going to be planning a summer garden. I'm already well deep into my summer garden. I've got tomatoes on the vine, I've been harvesting summer vegetables. I'm not going to be starting summer plants right now. They're not going to give me, they may start to grow, but they're not going to give me, an actual harvest because it's going to be too cold come the time that they would grow. So plants have something called days to harvest. that is the number of days in between putting the seed into the ground and picking the fruit off of the plant that you have, right? Days to harvest. You don't want to be starting a seed that is a summer plant in the summer, because the days to harvest would extend that into the fall, and it'll be too cold for that plant, or they won't have enough days and it'll freeze before it gives you any fruit. So when you're planting, you want to be considerate of those things. Right now, if you're in New Jersey, you're going to be planting your fall, and more so now your winter garden, because there's a lot of time in between seed and fruit for a gardener. There's a lot of waiting time. So just be considerate of that. What season are you in? And try to consider how long it really will take for something to grow and give you fruit, so that way you can cater it to whatever season it currently is and whatever season that kind of plant prefers. It's a little confusing. It gets more clear when you've got guides. Speaking of guides, figuring out what season you're in and what likes what season is difficult, particularly in the beginning when you don't have the experience of just seeing plants growing in their season and when they're happy and when they're not. So I would start out when you're new, even when I use a gardening calendar, because it's beneficial. So I don't have my big gardening calendar in front of me. It's also in a spreadsheet, which I don't know how to like technologically show you, but I have an example of a growing calendar that's provided by a seed company. So a growing calendar usually has the months of the year and plants down the side telling you when things prefer to grow. So in this one, it tells you when to sow those plants or when to start those plants. This one has a little bit of extra stuff on the side about how to store them, but you can see there's a list of plants here, a list of months here, and they kind of highlight when you want to be sowing those plants. If you Google growing calendar 6A or growing calendar, whatever your zone is, they will give you, usually they're kind of basic with like not all of the plants that you may want to grow, but it gives you an idea of what types of plants you want to be starting in what months, when they transplant into the garden, when you're going to expect harvest from them. That is incredibly helpful. Sorry, I can't help with the mower. Of course, my sweet father is mowing right next to where I'm videotaping, but a growing calendar will give you a great start as to when are you right now and what can you plant at that time. So once you get an idea of what your growing season is and what type of plants can grow within your growing season, you want to pick out your seeds. So there's a bunch of different resources for picking out seeds, anywhere from, a box store, your local nursery, or like bigger companies. There's like Bonnie and Gurney's. I have a couple of favorites that I get my seeds from. These are kind of big companies, but not as big as like a Monsanto situation. And the two companies that I get most of my seeds from are Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company. This is their 2021 catalog. It's gigantic. They have a really beautiful catalog with a bunch of like great information about the different seeds and the plants that come from those seeds. It's really a beautiful work of art. I always look forward to the Baker Creek catalogs, but you want to either go to a seed catalog or the website of a couple of different seed distributors, see what they have, see what kind of plants you like. The cost, some seed companies are a little more expensive than others. Baker Creek is actually pretty affordable, and they have free shipping in the US and Canada. This is not an ad for Baker Creek, but I just really like them. Most of my seeds come from them. Most of my seeds do really, really well and have good germination, unless they tell me that it's going to be a low germination plant. I trust them. They're not weird Monsanto affiliates. Love Baker Creek. The other resources are my other biggest resource for seeds is Territorial Seed Company. They do their catalogs more seasonally. So this is their spring 2021 and their fall winter 2021. Again, their catalog is like less showy than Baker Creek's, but it has a lot of great information about their plants. This is all their kales. And Territorial I have to say, does a really great job of giving information as to what the preferred climate, days to harvest, soil amendments, all that stuff for their plants. It's very clear. It's a lot easier. This is really, I would say, if you're a new gardener, Territorial's got really good information. Some of their seeds are a little more expensive, and you can kind of get less seeds for the same price, where you'd get more in Baker Creek. But my one complaint of Baker Creek is they don't always have really clear instructions in terms of how long it takes to get a harvest from that plant and what exactly the growing conditions are, like the preferred growing conditions are for certain plants. So it's kind of a toss-up because they have so many different growers and so many different seeds. Sometimes you don't get as clear directions for certain seeds from Baker Creek. My lovely father. I don't know if you get to see him mow. There he is. Hi, Dad. So anyway, resources, online, your local nursery, that's where you can get your seeds from. While you're picking out your seeds from whatever resource that you're picking them out from, read over what the preferred conditions are for that particular seed. Oh man. What unfortunate timing. He's just doing circles around the greenhouse. So just like everything we mentioned before, you're going to want to consider those when you're planting your seeds. Some varieties do really well in small containers. Others cannot stand a small container. Obviously you want to have the climate, considered. So you can say, it'll say on the seed like prefers X climate. I think some of them even, so here's an example of why I really like Territorial. For example, for garlic, they have a little chart in their catalog that says what type of garlic prefers what type of climate. And like gives them when they mature, what they look like, and like the different varieties. And then they use these terms on their individual garlic, telling you what type. It's a purple type, it's a turban type. That is really, really helpful. So you can say, okay, which ones are the types that'll grow well in my environment, and then you can pick out those. So, there's helpful things like that. Territorial is really great for having very clear instructions, what will go well, or what plants will do well where. However, Baker Creek has varieties that other seed companies don't have. They have a lot of heirloom varieties. It's an heirloom seed company. And I just want to give you an example. They've got like tomatoes. No, where are they? They've got like micro tomatoes. So you can grow, if you're just a back porch grower and you've got a tiny little like terracotta pot, you can grow tomatoes from Baker Creek in that pot. So do your research, figure out what varieties are out there and what will be best suited to your garden. A lot of time was spent on picking out varieties. It's fun to do it, but it takes a lot of time, but it really, really makes a difference. If you give something the climate and conditions that it likes, it'll grow. If you don't, you might get a product out, you might get a harvest out, but it might not be as successful as something that was designed or prefers those conditions. Once you actually get your seeds, you're going to want to look at your seed packet or reference the catalog or the website with the information about the preferred conditions of that packet. You need to revisit them pretty frequently. I don't remember all of the preferred conditions of all my plants. You start to get a general idea of like different types of plants, but within variety, I usually forget, so I just have to reference my seed packet or reference my catalog or whatever resource that company gives you to provide you with information about the preferred growing conditions. What I mean by that is, what's the preferred temperature of that plant? You know, broccoli doesn't want to be in 100-degree weather, so you're not planting that in the summer. You know, what type of soil the plant prefers, the light requirements, the space requirements, the days until harvest. These are all going to dictate where and when you plant certain things. When you get your seeds, you want to plant the right number of starts, or you want to start the right number of seeds to fit accordingly in your garden space. I notoriously overplant my seeds. Like, I always have way more than I need or way less than I need, and it's very frustrating. I'm trying to get better at it, but you want to basically you don't want to start a random amount. You want to go with a number that makes sense, that'll go into your garden. What I mean by this is you got to measure your space. Like, how much space do you have? That's really what I'm talking about here. Literally measure out, like, say you've got a bed or a mound. Take the dimensions of that mound. Most of my beds are 4x8, so I've got 32 square feet of space in most of my beds. Look on your seed packet. It'll say how much space that mature plant requires. Say it's, usually it'll say 12 to 24 inches or 18 inches, or it'll give you some kind of number. That number is what you're going to use to calculate how many plants you're going to want to start. For example, I usually write everything out. Like, I'll draw an actual picture of my space. It makes it a lot easier. I'm a very visual person. So I did a rough drawing of a 4x8 bed. Most of my beds are 4x8. And for this example, our plant wants a foot of space as a mature plant. So I have 8 foot by 4 foot. That means I can plant 4 plants, across and 8 plants along, right? For every foot, I get a plant. If I have 32 square feet, I have 32 plants. I said that I would have 32 plants ideally in this bed. I'm going to start a little bit more than 32 seeds because I like to account for some loss. When you're starting seeds, there's a lot that can go wrong that will not have something grow, or have something grow a little bit and then die. Babies, I call them my babies, starts can be very finicky. If they get too dry, if they get too hot, if they get too wet, if they get too cold, they can be very finicky. That's why a lot of gardeners don't like starting from seed, because it's a lot of work. A lot of times you have one really hot day and it totally destroys all of your starts, and then you're like ruined. That's happened to me a lot. That's why I a lot of the time have way too many starts than I need, because I just want to account for loss. You lose a lot, especially when you're starting out. I've lost a ton. So I would at least say you're going to have 32 plants, at least round up to like 35. Give yourself some leeway to lose a couple of those plants. And some of them are like kind of runts, like you'll get a runt seed and it grows really small. It doesn't look like great. You want to have some, leeway to pick better, the best plants. Even if they all germinate and look good, some of them are going to look better than others, and you're going to want to select those to put in the garden to give you the fruit. The best looking starts will give you the best looking plants. So the other thing to consider is sometimes a seed packet will say extra packed for low germination. Certain plants just notoriously, or certain seed varieties, have really low germination. I think like my catnip packet says that. I think one of my cabbage packets say that. So when it says that, you're going to want to plant extra. Not all of them say that. I very infrequently get that message on my seed packet, but just keep that in mind. Maybe you want to put a couple of seeds in one little, pot, or, extra pots, whatever you want to do. Just when it says low germination, plant way more than you would. So, the other thing is give them the conditions that they like. Make sure you water those seeds, you give them the right kind of soil. You can look all that kind of stuff up. There's certain plants that like more nitrogen, there's certain plants that like more phosphorus, there's certain plants that also you have to add potassium at a certain point. All of those things are particular to the type of plant and sometimes even the variety. So Territorial, I think, does a good job of writing out what kind of what kind of amendments certain plants need, but you can always look that up. Like every time you plant something, just say like, what preferred conditions for this plant type, and you can Google that and it'll tell you. I don't have time to go over all that now. The other big thing I just want to kind of hammer home is if you're starting from seed, you need a lot of time before you get to harvest that plant. I know I said that before, but just keep that in mind. It humbles you a little bit when you're like, I really want, it's August, I really want to have tomatoes. Like, you're not gonna have tomatoes if you're starting from seed. Get a start, you know what I mean? Go to a greenhouse and get a start. So just try to be realistic. Just because you're at the end of the summer doesn't mean that you can't have a great successful garden still. Like the fall, depending on your climate, can have great opportunity for having a full, lovely, bountiful garden. It just, depends on your climate and where you are. And be nice to yourself. You're probably gonna fail a lot. I failed a lot. I still fail a lot. I am very frequently overambitious and think that I can accomplish more than I can, and things die and I feel sad because I feel like I've wasted it. Just be nice to yourself. Experiment, have fun, do your best. Google is your friend. YouTube is your friend. Hopefully that these little tips helped you figure out when to start things and how to get started and plan. I just basically used YouTube as my kind of teacher. This planting video is really kind of for my mom. So hi, Mom. Good luck and happy gardening.